Hey everyone, in the past 2 weeks I've been sharing my Christian perspective on the book Quantum Healing by Deepak Chopra, which is a major player in the New Age movement, broadly speaking. I talked about how quantum healing teaches that a universal mind is fundamental to reality and that a person can change their own reality by changing their mind, even to the point of stopping the aging process, healing from terminal disease, and the like. I spent the past videos critiquing the arguments. Here, I want to discuss Chopra's fourth big teaching point that I pulled out of his book, that is, the teaching of how we can attain quantum healing. And then, if you decide to stick around to the end, I've got some final thoughts about spontaneous healings and the better path to finding hope. For those who work through this book, their first impression will probably be that Chopra's methods for healing sound relatively normal and harmless. He mentions that his method is intended to be holistic and specifically catered to each individual. For instance, he wants to know a patient's family background, fears, etc., and then he talks about anger management, stress reduction, positive thinking, and so on. But as you press more and more into the book, he starts to speak about ancient philosophies and Eastern healing techniques, which go far beyond the general practice of mental health. For instance, he tells a story in chapter 1 of when he referred a cancer patient to a special clinic. He said to her, "I want you to go to a special clinic outside Boston for a week or two. Some things that will happen to you there will seem highly unusual. You are used to the idea of a hospital as a place with respirators, IV tubes, transfusions, and chemotherapy. By that standard, what we will do for you at this clinic will seem like nothing. Basically, I want to get your body into a deep, deep state of rest." Notice that he's kind of massaging the idea of alternative medicine, and it seems harmless enough. We want to give our bodies the opportunity to heal themselves. Resting is good, but the clinic practices Ayurveda, which is an ancient medical technique from India. Here's how Ayurveda is described by the National Ayurvedic Medical Association. The Sanskrit term Ayurveda translates to knowledge of life, and the principles of this ancient wisdom remind us that the entire web of life is intricately interwoven, with a unique emphasis on total wellness. The art and science of Ayurveda work to harmonize our internal and external worlds. Our five senses serve as portals between the internal and external realms, as the five great elements of ether, air, fire, water, and earth dance the dance of creation around and within us. Ayurveda groups these five elements into three basic types of energy and functional principles that are present in everybody and everything. Since there are no single words in English to describe these principles, we use the Sanskrit words Vata, Pitta, and Kapha to describe their combinations. Everything that we experience, be it a physical substance, a thought, or emotion, has certain qualities. The ancient texts of Ayurveda classify these qualities, called gunas in Sanskrit, into 10 pairs of opposites, making 20 qualities total. For example, heavy versus light. Theoretically, everything in the universe can be described in terms of these gunas or qualities, including the doshas. The foundation of Ayurvedic treatment relies upon recognizing when gunas have become excessive or deficient, as this is known to cause doshic imbalance and lead to disease. Ayurveda applies the opposite qualities to return to balance. Folks, if you get into that, you're getting into a whole lot more than a deep, deep state of rest. Reading on, Chopra starts to ease similar concepts into his book. He'll drop these ideas like self-care cannot help but begin at the source, where your consciousness merges with cosmic consciousness. He talks about meditation and yoga, saying that it leads the mind to a free zone that is not touched by disease. And yet throughout this journey, Chopra keeps trying to pull you back, saying, look, this is just normal, it's just science. Like on page 227, he says, "When I teach people Ayurvedic healing techniques, I am not introducing them to a Vedic world or into some mystery. I'm trying to let them realize that their own awareness creates, controls, and turns into their bodies. This is a fact, not just a Vedic view of things." The Vedas, by the way, are the most ancient Hindu scriptures. So here he is, denying that he is promoting these Eastern religions, but then 11 pages later, he says Ayurveda will use primordial sounds to send a specific signal to repair a break in the bliss, that joyous feeling which binds together mind, body, and DNA. And then on page 278, he says, together, Meditation, the bliss technique, and primordial sound are the practical application of all that I have been building up to, the tools of quantum healing. One of the Ayurvedic traditions uses TM, transcendental meditation. That piqued my interest because I read a book from a former teacher of TM who studied directly under its founder, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, but later converted to Christianity. She revealed that TM kind of messed her up. She lost a sense of herself. She couldn't have normal conversations with people anymore. She saw this in her fellow students as well, but she attributed the change to being more evolved. And here's what really caught my attention. She said this: plainly put, a person who practiced TM was engaging in a form of Hindu religious practice, whether he or she realized it or not. We were told, however, to present TM to the public as merely a scientific exercise because they were not evolved enough to understand the spiritual transformation they would be experiencing. I can't help but wonder if that's what's going on with Deepak Chopra and quantum healing. You get these moments where he presents his evidence and then looks to an old Vedic text as if to say, would you look at that? These guys knew this to be true all along. Why does he do this? The fact that he uses all this Sanskrit terminology that is so specific to Hindu ideology, like samadhi and dara and maya, strongly implies that he has a bigger agenda than just wellness advice. People are going to see this and be curious and start investing themselves in Vedic knowledge and other spiritual gurus and seers and clairvoyants and the like. Certainly Chopra knows this is what's happening to his audience. Religion aside, Chopra has also left the impression on me that your best shot at quantum healing is to minimize or stop traditional methods of healing. He says that traditional medication can leave a patient with guilt, like when you warn them about the danger of eating too much. He has mixed feelings about that. Traditional medicine could cause a patient to panic when they hear a grim diagnosis from a doctor. He says certain drugs may block the body's natural ability to heal itself. Chemotherapy, in particular, is frustrating for Chopra because of how violent it is against the body and how you can lose hair, which can cause feelings of shame. Thing is, for most of the book, you can tell that he has a love-hate relationship with traditional medicine. He doesn't deny that medications and surgery can help, but he also stresses that laughter can defeat a fatal disease. So can drinking a glass of grape juice every day if you believe strongly enough in it. This is probably one of the biggest critiques against Chopra by the secular world because there are people refusing standard medical treatment because of his ideas. And I couldn't find a single spot in his book where he rebuked those kinds of people, even in the expanded parts of his 2015 edition. Sometimes medical treatments become so taxing on our quality of life that we just have to say enough and let the pegs fall where they may. But that's no reason to reject modern medicine in principle. Let me close this 3-part video series with a little more about this idea of spontaneous healing. Last week I talked about how in rare instances, people experience healing that should be impossible, medically speaking. Chopra believes that these healings are a result of experiencing a higher state of awareness. Assuming that it was indeed medically impossible, Christians would typically say that God miraculously healed the person. You have these reports from Christians who say that they were healed after they believed by faith that Jesus would heal them. Chopra believes his worldview can explain this because the act of believing by faith is a quantum leap of the mind of believing Christians. That's just what happens when you believe by faith that you're going to be healed. But if someone is miraculously healed through Chopra's methods, a Christian will struggle to say that it was God who healed them. They weren't trusting in God, they weren't praying to him, and yet it still happened. So it seems that Chopra can explain all spontaneous healings, but Christians can only explain their own spontaneous healings. That would give Chopra's worldview an edge over the Christian worldview. However, I think the reverse is actually true. The Christian worldview accounts for supernatural healings outside of God. Setting aside the open possibility of an unknown natural explanation, we understand that this world is also influenced by demonic forces. And the Bible gives us a worldview where these demonic forces work to deceive the world in supernatural ways. Similar to a child abductor who lures kids into his van with candy, it would not be a theological stretch to suggest that demonic forces are luring people away from God with counterfeit healing. When I read from the Encyclopedia Britannica that Ayurveda is attributed to Dhanvantari, the physician of the gods in Hindu mythology, who received it from Brahma, that's going to raise some alarms in my mind. I mean, this is not a spiritually neutral world. Like food sacrificed to idols in 1 Corinthians 10, the food is just food, but the sacrifice is to demons. And Paul says, I do not want you to be participants with demons. On the flip side, there are many kinds of spontaneous healings reported by Christians, which cannot be explained by Chopra's worldview. You pick up Dr. Craig Keener's 2-volume academic work on miracles, and you'll hear documented reports of healings that happened to people who didn't believe. You'll see healings that happen to infants who wouldn't be aware of what's going on. You'll even hear reports of people coming back from the dead. None of this makes sense if healing is attained through higher consciousness. Furthermore, you'll also hear much, much higher rates of healing among Christians. Chopra tells us that spontaneous remissions are less than 0.1%. But then you have a study of sub-Saharan Africa where 56% of Christians claim to have witnessed or experienced a divine healing of an illness or injury. In Ethiopia, one church was surveyed and found that 83% of believers claim that they became a Christian because of healings or exorcisms. Likewise, Christianity in China has exploded in recent times, largely due to people witnessing or experiencing supernatural healing. Some estimates are about 90%. These are the reports we are hearing from Christians and missionaries around the world. I could give many more studies like this. Certainly some of these reports come from false information, charlatans, exaggerated fishtails, or maybe there are natural explanations. But at the same time, it seems to me that God is up to something far more promising than anything quantum healing is able to provide. And just to be clear, within Christianity, we don't promise anyone supernatural healing here on earth. We don't tell you that if you just tap into the power, you'll be healed. It's great when God does heal people. We can praise God for that. We can ask Him for healing with the authority we have as believers. But most importantly is that we trust the promise of God that whoever believes and trusts in Jesus will be fully healed, maybe here on earth, maybe not, but certainly in the life to come. All of these other miracle stories you hear, if they are real, were never meant to give us hope for quantum healing. They were meant to give us hope with eager expectation in the power of God to resurrect us with new life in Him. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.